In this session, I propose to be a little more faithful to the subject of our conversation, the Arabian Sea Dialogue, more specifically the India-GCC relationship, where we were, where we are, and where we hope to be. Of course, I think the previous sessions have really brought home the fact that the relationship has flourished since times immemorial. We have been trading, we have been at the level of very positive social interface, which is reflected in all that we see in terms of our architecture, astronomy, culture, cuisine. So we have a long historical connect, which Javed mentioned as ranging past to 5 millennia, probably from the time that our merchants and seamen learned to ply the trade winds. I think we have been really at the level of exchanges which far predates recent contacts with the West. In the contemporary situation, of course, we have re-established our connect, and I'll come down to that. Just a quick word on Indian foreign policy. We have some very interesting constructs. We have neighborhood first, we act east, and we look west. And when we look west, we speak about relations primarily with our friends from the Gulf. Now, although we have had very strong relationships ever since we became independent, I think the potentials of the relationship are now beginning to be realized only in the last 5 to 10 years. And one of the reasons for this, of course, is the very strong interest that the leadership in both our regions have taken. Prime Minister Modi, since he came to office in 2014, has very strongly recognized and emphasized the importance of our relationship with countries in the Gulf. He has visited the Gulf countries 9 times, which is quite a record. I don't think he has visited any other region except our immediate neighborhood as often as he has visited the Gulf countries. At the same time, the leadership in the Gulf have also come to India. 3 of the Gulf states, Saudi Arabia, UAE, and Bahrain, have conferred their highest civilian awards on the Prime Minister. India, of course, has looked at the relationship from the point of view of trust, security, a very strong people-to-people connect, and of course, economic ties. And we have seen, we have discerned a difference, and people spoke of the opportunities in let's say, overall dynamics and optics. India welcomed the understanding reached between the Quartet and Qatar. India welcomed the Abraham Accord. We have signed an unprecedented comprehensive economic partnership agreement with the UAE, one of the first countries with whom we have concluded such an agreement. And of course, there was a lot of talk on the I2U2, which is, again, a very new construct. It is an economic construct. It is one of partnership and cooperation, working on building, let's say, again, a strong people-to-people connect based on economic synergies. Now, one of the, I would say, strongest tests of any relationship and where we stand is in times of adversity and difficulty. And COVID-19 has really brought this to the fore. And I was quite privileged to see this relationship evolve in the last 2 to 3 years since the advent of COVID. Now, one, of course, is that we have about 8.5 million Indian citizens that live and work in the Gulf. When COVID-19, the pandemic broke out, obviously all economic activity came to a standstill. A lot of our citizens there were rendered jobless. But what struck us was the care and attention with which the Gulf countries looked after the Indian expatriate community and were able to arrange for their orderly departure when the time came. At the same time, I also saw that when we had a lockdown, there was not a car or not a single person who was out on the streets during the first wave. We had requests from the Gulf countries to make sure that the supply chains were open. In other words, food, medicines, and essentials that went from India had to be kept going. And here is where I think I saw the system really, I think, adjust and provide that level of flexibility that you see in the event of friendships that are really genuine. And we allowed flights to come in and pick up all of this, despite all the restrictions that were in place at that time. And I must say, genuine concerns about the spread of the infection that was there across the world. So it was not only the supply chains, but also, I would say, a health partnership that emerged. We supplied medicines when it came to the first wave. We supplied vaccines when it came to the second wave. We supplied, of course, I think 5.5 million doses of vaccines to the Gulf countries, both Covishield and Covaxin. And that relationship, I think, was cemented when the Gulf countries asked for Indian personnel in the health sector, doctors, paramedics, nurses, to be positioned in the Gulf countries to help with the health capacity and infrastructure. But one thing very few people know is that in the beginning of the pandemic, there was quite a lot of, I would say, uncertainty that many of our friends faced. Of course, none of us knew what COVID was, and there was no, playbook by which we could orient ourselves. But many of our friends said that please help us in devising systems and capacities to deal with this crisis. And that's when we had our rapid response teams, which went to many of our neighbors, friends, including in the Gulf. And these rapid response teams worked with doctors and the health administrations to provide systems that would enable these countries to actually deal with this pandemic and the scale of the pandemic, which was unprecedented. So that's another area of cooperation which is quite unique. And when we had our second wave, many of us would remember that the one thing that we lacked was liquid medical oxygen. We had it, but there were supply constraints, distribution constraints. We needed immediate supplies of the LMO. And the Gulf countries came to the fore. And I remember every of the Gulf countries said that please feel free to take whatever quantities you need from us. Our Navy came to the forefront. The Chief of Naval Staff said our ships are ready. And we had our naval ships actually ferry liquid medical oxygen. And over 2,000 metric tons of LMO came from all of the Gulf countries into India and greatly helped in stabilizing what was actually a very worrying stage of the pandemic in India. So that level of cooperation that we saw with the Gulf countries in the recent past exemplifies today the sort of place that we find ourselves in terms of our cooperation, our friendship, and our partnership with the Gulf. Now, I know time is short, I just want to make a few, points that could be the direction that our countries could take in the next, 25 years as we run up to the 100th anniversary of our independence, what we call Amrit Kal. This period of our country as a young nation with an average age of 28 years, a nation that is on a growth trajectory. We're looking at becoming a developed nation by 2047. What can we and the GCC countries do in the next 25 years? What are the options available to us? And there are many, and I want to list some which are, I must say, which are purely personal in nature. They are not at all comprehensive, but nonetheless. One of the issues, of course, is that we've had an institutional dialogue with the GCC for as long as we can remember. It's been quite a few years. It's at the level of foreign minister. What we could do is to raise it to the level of India's partnership with the GCC at the level of head of state and government. We have such constructs with our other regional partners. We have it with the ASEAN. We have it with the Central Asian states. We have it with the African Union. We have it with the Pacific Island states, just to give you some examples. And there is no reason why we can't elevate this dialogue to the level of head of state of government. That will also give us the opportunity to interface with the entire GCC. We, at this point of time, and from the conversations I could sort of glean in the last couple of hours, clearly, the outreach has been, has had its, areas of growth, but we need to have more equitable outreach, and that dialogue might give us the opportunity. The second is, of course, investments in India's manufacturing capabilities, in India's let's say, the fact that we would represent one of the largest markets and growing markets in terms of demographics in the next 25 years. The Gulf countries have been investing in India, especially the sovereign wealth funds have been putting in money in India. Ambassador Suri has done a sterling job in directing that investment. But what we see, of course, is that there is a it appears that the Gulf will be at the receiving end of a very, very strong dividend from the sale of energy, up to $3 trillion in terms of a dividend over the next 5 years. What will you do with that wealth? How will you invest that wealth? Where is it that your potentials fully lie? And I would certainly say that you should place your bets in India, not because it is a relationship which is based on friendship of centuries or millennia, but because the next 25 years will give you the sort of return on investments from India which I think you will rarely see in any other part of the world. Now, let me go on to also talk about the fact that both our regions have been looking at climate change very seriously. In India, we are committed to creating 500 gigabytes of renewable energy. We will have 50% of our installed electric capacity from renewable energy. There is a huge energy transition which requires investment. So, but also not just investments, but also technology. We look at collaborations, we look at joint R&D, we look at manufacturing. We're already doing it with Oman in green hydrogen. We're looking at working with all of the Gulf countries in areas such as renewable energy, green hydrogen, desalination, cutting-edge technologies that we can put our money into, and certainly look at dividends that would take us beyond the current stage of fossil fuels into a completely new era of green and clean energies. We also, I think, need to focus, and this was also the subject of discussion earlier, on the future of employment and youth. I think youth offers a very, very great opportunity. The people-to-people connect is very important. In India, our growth has been fueled by technology, by the use of technology, and it is coming from the youngest sections of our population. We started with no startups, but today we have thousands of startups. We have hundreds of unicorns, and we even have a few decacons. So we are looking at a growth of technology of a kind that is unprecedented, and it will be fueled by the younger generations of our country. And finally, defense and security. I mean, a defense and security mutual understanding between us and the Gulf. There was some talk about this also. Raji talked about joint collaborations, joint R&D. I think India and the Gulf could work together in the defense and create a new paradigm of cooperation that doesn't exist today. And we have all the reasons to do so. We not only share the Arabian Sea, but we have similar security and I would say, concerns that are in many senses those that we can share, whether they're from terrorism, radicalism, or even piracy or other areas. We can work together to create a paradigm that's unique. So I'll stop here with these ideas, but I think we really have an opportunity today to look at the future in a way that we've never done before. And I'm glad that the Arabian Sea Dialogue has given us the opportunity to at least think of some of these issues out of the box and in a way that can foster more candid discussions, conversations, and even, I would say, iron out some of the remaining differences or issues that remain in the relationship. Thank you so much.